Hello, thanks for joining us. You're watching Scotland at 7. Today it's Tuesday the 24th of May. I'm Hugh Stewart. I'm going to run over the main stories today, just myself. We don't have any guests on. Most of the MPs and MSPs we usually talk to are very busy with votes and debates today. So I'll begin as usual with the latest roundup on Russia's illegal war in Ukraine. This brings us to day 90, 3 months of war. First of all, Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has said that Moscow will focus on developing relations with China, though would reconsider offers from the West to re-establish ties. Russia has increased the intensity of its operations in the Donbass as it seeks to encircle Severodonetsk, Luhansk and Rubizhny in order to place the whole of Luhansk Oblast under Russian occupation, according to the UK Ministry of Defence. The Russia-appointed administration of Ukraine's Kherson region will ask Moscow to set up a military base on its territory, according to Russia's RIA Novosti news agency. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said that Vladimir Putin was the only Russian official he was willing to meet to discuss how to end the war. The president of the Russian Federation decides it all, he said. A team of Colombian soldiers will travel to Europe to train their Ukrainian counterparts on demining techniques, the South American country's defence ministry has said. Finland and Sweden will send delegations to Ankara tomorrow to try to resolve Turkish opposition to their applications for membership of the NATO military alliance. Finland's Foreign Minister Pekko Haavisto has said that today. Poland has continued to signal its intent to bolster its defences in the light of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Defence Secretary Mariusz Błaszczak said that the country intends to buy 6 additional Patriot missile batteries. A veteran Russian diplomat in Geneva has resigned over the invasion of Ukraine in a rare political protest from within the Russian foreign policy establishment. Boris Bondarev, a councillor at the Russian permanent mission to the UN in Geneva, wrote in a public statement, "Never have I been so ashamed of my country." He confirmed he had submitted his letter of resignation. 20 countries announced new security assistance packages and agreed to send more advanced weapons to Ukraine, including a Harpoon launcher and missiles to protect the coast, said Lloyd Austin, US Defence Secretary. The new security packages include critically needed artillery ammunition, coastal defence systems, tanks and other armoured vehicles. Denmark pledged to send Harpoon anti-ship missiles, which could be used to push the Russian Navy away from Ukraine's Black Sea ports, thus allowing exports of grain and the other agricultural products to resume. The European Union will be likely to agree an embargo on Russian oil imports within days, Germany's Economy Minister Robert Habeck has said on Monday yesterday. Nearly 90 people were killed in a Russian airstrike on the village of Desna in the northern Ukrainian region of Chernihiv, according to President Zelensky. The Desna attack is Ukraine's biggest military death toll in one single strike of the war so far, if verified. Ukrainian fighters who surrendered at the Azovstal steelworks in the port city of Mariupol are going to be put on trial, according to the head of the breakaway Donetsk region, Denis Pushilin. Now turning to London, the Metropolitan Police are under mounting pressure to justify their decision not to further fine the Prime Minister for attending a drinks gathering, as London's mayor urged a public explanation. The Met last week closed its investigation into Partygate, leaving Boris Johnson with the one fine, despite claims he was an active participant at several gatherings which breached his own government's COVID rules. On Monday, that decision came under scrutiny when photos emerged of Mr Johnson with a glass in hand, surrounded by other people clutching glasses, apparently toasting the departing Downing Street aide Lee Kane in front of a table littered with empty bottles of alcohol. Sadiq Khan announced on Tuesday today that he had written to the acting Met Commissioner, Sir Stephen House, asking that Britain's biggest police force explain to the public how decisions were reached. Mayor Khan, as well as being Mayor of London, oversees the Met as the Police and Crime Commissioner for the capital. He said he was concerned that trust and confidence in the police was being lost as incredulity at the decision grows following the leak of those photos to ITV News. And here the SNP has challenged Douglas Ross, the Scottish Tory leader, to resubmit his letter of no confidence in Boris Johnson after this new photo evidence showing that the Prime Minister had apparently been partying during lockdown. The SNP have accused Boris Johnson of lying to the public. Kirsten Oswald MP said that the evidence destroyed Boris Johnson's excuses and exposed Douglas Ross as what she called a weak and unprincipled politician by flip-flopping over the Prime Minister's future. Commenting, Kirsten Oswald, who is the SNP's deputy Westminster leader, said, "The photo evidence has destroyed Boris Johnson's excuses and exposed his lies. It's now beyond doubt that the Prime Minister was partying during lockdown, breaking his own laws and repeatedly lying to the public. Douglas Ross," she said, "doesn't need any more explanation. He needs to grow a backbone and resubmit his letter of no confidence without further delay." By constant flip-flopping over Boris Johnson's future, the Scottish Tory leader has blown any remaining credibility and shown himself to be a weak and unprincipled lame duck leader. That's Kirsten Oswald there speaking about Douglas Ross. Okay, another report out today about UK's disastrous evacuation from Afghanistan last year. The senior civil servant in charge of the Foreign Office should consider his position after presiding over a disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan that betrayed UK allies, put lives in danger and showed a total absence of planning and was chaotically managed, according to MPs in a damning report. This report from the Foreign Affairs Select Committee said the absence of leadership, both ministerial and official, including the Permanent Secretary Sir Philip Barton, when Kabul fell, was inexcusable and a grave indictment on those supposedly in charge. It added that Barton had failed to give candid evidence to the committee and says as a result it has lost all confidence in him. The committee also accused him of covering up political interference in the fast tracking of some individuals out of Afghanistan. The committee said that while junior officials at the Foreign Office, that's the FCDO, demonstrated courage and integrity, chaotic and arbitrary decision making marked the planning and the execution of the evacuation. The report says, sadly, it may have cost many people the chance to leave Afghanistan, putting lives in danger. The report also found that senior officials were intentionally evasive and often deliberately misleading to Parliament, noting, "The integrity of the civil service depends on those leading those organisations to show the courage to tell the truth to the British people." The report, one of the most damning to be issued by a select committee under the Conservative government, also extends criticism to then Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab. It might be convenient to blame FCDO officials or military intelligence for these failures, but ministers should have been driving the policy, it said. Commenting on the report released today by the Foreign Affairs Committee on withdrawal from Afghanistan, the SNP's defence spokesperson, a member of the committee, Stuart MacDonald MP, said, "This report exposes a serious lack of leadership, accountability and decision-making from some of those at the top of the FCDO at ministerial and official level when the Afghan government fell, which may have risked lives and cost many people the chance to leave the country. The courageous efforts of the military and civilian personnel on the ground in Afghanistan and many in the FCDO have been let down by the absence of a proper strategy, leadership and meaningful planning, creating one of the biggest foreign policy disasters of modern times. Those responsible must now be considering their positions." That was Stuart MacDonald MP of the SNP, a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee in Westminster. Back to energy prices now. Ofgem, the regulator for energy prices, is on course to raise the cap on household energy bills to about £2,800 a year in October. The regulator's chief executive, Jonathan Brearley, has told MPs. The increase in the cap would push the average annual bill up by more than £800. That's after the regulator already increased it by £693 in April to a total of £1,971. That's an average annual bill. Mr. Brearley told the Parliament's Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy Committee, that's the BEI, committee that the figure was provisional but was based on the most accurate current estimate. Energy prices pushed the Consumer Prices Index, the CPI, up to 9% in April, fueling criticism that the government had failed to protect millions of low-income families from making the choice of feeding themselves or heating their homes. Responding to the announcement, the SNP's Alan Brown, Member of Parliament, who's in the BEIS committee, said, "Households are already suffering from higher energy bills and food prices. This latest update that the energy price cap is expected to rise again this October to around a staggering £2,800 will be a devastating hammer blow to families. Many people," he said, "are struggling to make ends meet and are being forced to turn to food banks and make the impossible choice of having to choose between heating or eating." Yet despite the grim warnings, the Tory government has been caught like a rabbit in the headlights with its refusal to act. The reality is that the Tories are more focused on saving the Prime Minister's skin than on supporting families. Mr Brown went on to say that families cannot afford to be kept waiting for the Chancellor in the hope that he may bring forward measures. People need real support, and they need it now. The SNP has been clear that Rishi Sunak must bring forward an emergency budget to reverse rising levels of UK poverty and mitigate the damage caused to incomes by the Tory cuts, by tax hikes and by Brexit, including reversing his £1,040 a year cut to universal credit. Mr Brown, who is a Kilmarnock and Loudon MP, added, "The Tory-made cost of living crisis is spiralling out of control and the UK government will never be forgiven for abandoning families with no help in the face of the biggest economic crisis in decades." I've also heard this afternoon from the SNP, responding to Ofgem's announcement that prices are going to go up again. Michael Matheson, Scottish Energy Secretary, said that today's confirmation that the Ofgem price cap is going to increase in October is not unexpected, but it's clearly going to make an already challenging situation for householders much worse. He went on to say that the UK government holds most of the powers needed to support families, and he called on the UK government to target support at least to those consumers who are least able to pay, to, for example, cut VAT, and to have a four nations discussion on the way to deal with the energy and poverty crisis. And finally, Michael Matheson for the Scottish Government again renewed calls for the UK Government to implement a one-off windfall tax on the energy generators who are making huge profits during this period. Okay, our next story, also on energy, is about the just transition away from fossil fuels in the North Sea towards sustainable energy. A new fund to support the North East economy in its transition to net zero will open next week for expressions of interest. The Just Transition Fund for the North Eastern Moray will help to finance organisations, businesses, communities and individuals to transition to net zero, creating jobs in low carbon industries and contributing to the region's future prosperity. This financial year, £20 million will be made available. Of that, £1 million will be available to directly fund communities through a participatory budget mechanism, which means that communities can design and vote on their favourite just transition projects. This follows extensive engagement across the region with partners including local authorities, the private sector, enterprise agencies, trade unions and community organisations to design the fund and to understand how to deliver the most impact. The 10-year £500 million Just Transition Fund is part of the Butte House Agreement between the SNP and the Scottish Green Party and a programme for government commitment in the current year 21 to 22. Speaking at the Offshore Energies UK conference, Richard Lockhead, who's the Scottish Minister for Just Transition, Employment and Fair Work, said, "It's vital that as Scotland transitions its society and economy towards the low-carbon net zero future, that no individual, community or region is left behind. A just transition is about ensuring that this economic transformation is managed fairly for workers in existing industries. I have said from the outset that my priority is to listen carefully to the people and sectors most impacted, ensuring our approach to a just transition is co-designed. That's why I'm pleased to be announcing that the fund will be opening following an extensive period of conversation with our partners in the region. It's their input that's helped to shape the fund's design with a more innovative approach and a variety of funding streams." Responding to the announcement, North East MSP Gillian Martin encouraged businesses, organisations and individuals to apply for the new £20 million fund to support the net zero economy in its transition towards net zero. And excuse me, our next story on Northern Ireland. The UK government are pushing ahead with plans to offer an amnesty to former soldiers and individuals involved in decades of sectarian violence in Northern Ireland, as victims say the new law will deprive them of justice. Unresolved crimes from Northern Ireland's 3 decades of confrontation between loyalist and nationalist groups, paramilitaries and the UK military, which killed around 3,600 people, remains a contentious issue more than 2 decades after a peace deal was struck. MPs discussed the proposed new law, which would create a committee offering immunity to anyone who cooperates with investigations to help families find out what happened in hundreds of unsolved murders today. The government has said that any individual who genuinely cooperates with the inquiries will be granted immunity. If individuals do not cooperate, they could still be prosecuted. Relatives of the victims angrily rejected what they said would result in an amnesty for killers or rapists. Protesters wearing white masks carried a coffin bearing the word justice outside Parliament as lawbreakers debated the law. Christine Duffy, 52, whose 15-year-old brother was killed when a plastic bullet hit his heart in North Belfast in 1989, said this new law would deprive her of hopes that his killer would one day stand trial. She said, "Murder is murder, and anyone who commits it should be held accountable," she told reporters outside Parliament. "My brother is entitled to justice, and this law means he will never get it." Introducing the new law, Northern Ireland Secretary Brandon Lewis said the legislation will put information recovery at its core, as prosecutions linked to the violence are increasingly unlikely to result in convictions. The UK government's plans have been consistently opposed by Northern Ireland's main Irish nationalist and pro-unionist parties, victims groups and the Irish government. Irish Foreign Minister Simon Coveney said Dublin had serious concerns and could not support the bill. Sinn Féin's leader Mary Lou MacDonald, whose party won the most seats in the Northern Irish elections last month, said the provisions affording an amnesty to British soldiers would make a despot blush, as she put it. And now I turn to the controversial UK government's plan to send asylum seekers to Rwanda for processing. Priti Patel's plan to send refugees on a one-way ticket to Rwanda is being legally challenged over the government's alleged failure to identify risks facing vulnerable groups such as LGBTQ plus people. A pre-action letter sent to the Home Office on behalf of the pressure group Freedom from Torture questions government claims that the East African Strait is, as they put it, a generally safe country for refugees. That's the UK government's quote, generally safe country for refugees. The Department's Equality Impact Assessment for the policy said that there were concerns over the treatment of some LGBTQ plus people in Rwanda, and said that investigations pointed to ill treatment of this group being more than a one-off. Despite this, the government's assessment of Rwanda's human rights record states that there were not substantial grounds for believing that LGBTQ plus people would be at risk of treatment contrary to Article 3 of the European Convention of Human Rights. Article 3 states that people have the right to be free from torture or inhuman and degrading treatment. Sonia Skeets, who's the chief executive of Freedom from Torture, said, the government's willful blindness to the risks facing people expelled under this regime are frankly horrifying, including attempts to minimise the threat posed to LGBTQI people in Rwanda. At least 50 migrants have been handed a notice of intent saying that they have been identified as eligible to be sent to Rwanda, where they will be expected to claim asylum. A pre-action letter from the solicitors Lee Day on behalf of Freedom from Torture says, our client has serious concerns regarding the process by which vulnerability will be assessed in terms of suitability for transfer to Rwanda, and if transfer is assessed as being appropriate, individuals' needs in Rwanda. The letter challenges the lawfulness of that policy on the grounds that the government's claim that Rwanda is generally a safe country is irrational. It relies upon apparently predetermination or bias, that the Home Secretary has breached her duty not to introduce breaches of the European Convention of Human Rights by her agents. And the complaint goes on to say that removing asylum seekers to Rwanda is beyond Priti Patel's legal authority because it's contrary to the Refugee Convention. Because the government's claims that removals to Rwanda could begin as early as the 6th of June, the letter demands a response under a pre-action protocol within 7 days and reserves the right to issue proceedings without further reference to the government. Other organisations have also issued pre-action letters against the Rwanda plan. In a joint action, PCS, Care for Calais and Detention Action have received a response from the Home Office to their second pre-action letter, which also challenged Priti Patel's plan to send people seeking asylum to Rwanda. They're represented by Duncan Lewis solicitors. The Foreign Office travel advice to Rwanda states, and I quote, individuals can experience discrimination and abuse, including from local authorities. There are no specific anti-discrimination laws that protect LGBT individuals. That's the official advice from the Home Office if you're thinking of travelling to Rwanda. Okay, now let's deal with a story coming from China. A new trove of hacked Chinese police photographs and documents shedding light on the human toll of Beijing's treatment of its Uyghur minority in Xinjiang has been published as the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, Michelle Bachelet, visits cities in the region. This data trove, referred to as the Xinjiang Police Files and published by a consortium of media, dates back to 2018 and was passed on by hackers to Dr. Adrian Zenz, who's a US-based scholar and activist, and he shared it with international media earlier this year. It includes thousands of photographs of detained people and details a shoot-to-kill policy for people who try to escape. The ruling Communist Party is accused of detaining more than 1 million Uyghurs and other Muslim minorities in the far western region as part of a years-long crackdown, which the US and politicians in other countries have labelled a genocide. In response to the new reports, the SNP has laid down fresh demands for a ban on imports from the Xinjiang Autonomous Region of China. The party's international development spokesman, who's Chris Law MP, called for the bans following an urgent question in the House of Commons, asking what plans the UK government had to sanction Chinese officials involved in the situation. Analysts and humanitarian organisations have described it as genocide. Earlier this year, the SNP's Member of Parliament Brendan O'Hara tabled a bill in the House of Commons calling for a ban and to require all companies importing products from Xinjiang to the UK to provide proof that the manufacture of those products has not involved forced labour. The UK currently lags behind the rest of the world on banning imports, with the European Commission drafting a proposal to ban goods made with forced labour from the EU market in the coming months, following action by the US Senate in passing the Uyghur Act to ban all imports from Xinjiang unless companies can prove that they are not made with forced labour. Commenting, Chris Law MP said, "Today's evidence is just the latest in a long documented systematic push to forcibly eradicate a culture and a religion from a peaceful people. Make no mistake," he said, "what is happening to the Uyghur Muslim communities in Xinjiang is genocide, a despicable situation that we should in no way be funding by continuing imports from the region." And now, children's rights in Scotland. Plans to progress Scotland's groundbreaking children's rights legislation have been announced by the Deputy First Minister John Swinney. The UNCRC Incorporated Scotland Bill was backed unanimously by the Scottish Parliament in March of 21, but could not be implemented because of a legal challenge brought by the UK government. In October, the Supreme Court in London ruled that certain parts of the bill were out with the legislative competence of the Scottish Parliament. The Scottish Government has now set out how it will address this. Over the next few weeks, there will be targeted engagement with relevant organisations and children and young people on the proposed changes to the bill. These will then be brought before Parliament via the reconsideration stage. The Deputy First Minister said the UNCRC bill was passed by the Scottish Parliament to deliver the highest protection possible for children's rights. The Supreme Court ruling was bitterly disappointing, but we have fully respected and carefully considered its implications. We sought the support from the UK Government to make modest adjustments to the Scotland Act to address the issues within the devolution settlement which the Supreme Court ruling highlighted. Despite their public commitment to engage constructively, this was rejected by the Secretary of State for Scotland. As a result, we will remove UK acts from the remedial provision within the bill, which is a dilution of the effect of the legislation, and we will consult with children and young people on the proposed changes. Responding to the announcement, Bruce Adamson, who's the Children and Young People's Commissioner for Scotland, said, "Today's announcement by the Scottish Government has been a long time coming for children. After much delay, it gives some hope that their rights will finally be properly protected in law. That hope must now be followed up with prompt and concrete action. All children will benefit from the protections of their rights being put into law, but it's particularly important for those children whose rights are most at risk. It's even more urgent for Scotland to secure children's rights given the UK Government's recently announced plan to weaken the protections in the Human Rights Act. COVID-19 and the cost of living crisis require a human rights-based response. This law will give children the power to enforce their rights, and we know from countries which have already incorporated children's rights that this has the potential to be a transformative change." Another Scottish story now. There are new plans announced for future legislation as part of the Scottish Government's response to an independent review into the handling of complaints against the police. The Scottish Government has launched a 12-week consultation on a new bill which delivers on a programme for government commitment made in September last year. The consultation follows the recommendations of an independent review of police complaints handling, investigations and misconduct in Scotland. The review was conducted by Dame Eilish Angiolini. A total of 34 recommendations have been implemented since her report was published in 2020, but others require legislative change. A consultation on a proposed police complaints, investigations and misconduct bill will seek views on key reforms including gross police officer misconduct hearings to be held in public, accelerated misconduct hearings for all ranks of officer where the evidence supports it, new processes to deal with gross misconduct even after the officer has left the service, additional powers for police investigations and review commissioner, including recommending the suspension of officers. Scottish Police Authority have reliability for unlawful conduct by a constable. The proposal is that Scottish Police Authority should have reliability for unlawful conduct by a chief constable. Commenting, Cabinet Secretary for Justice and Veterans Keith Brown said, "The vast majority of our police officers and police staff work tirelessly to protect our communities. However, we have to recognise that things do at times go wrong. It's in everyone's interests, from police officers and staff to the general public, that we have robust, clear and transparent mechanisms in place for investigating complaints or other issues of concern." The Scottish Government and partners have already made progress on the implementation of many of Dame Eilish's recommendations, but others do require legislative change. Through this consultation, we are seeking the views of the public, key partner organisations and stakeholders on these important next steps, in line with our wider commitment to ensure all public services are accountable, transparent and trusted. And our final story tonight, we can now review 10 years of family nurse partnerships in Scotland. More than 10,000 young mothers and their children have been helped by a decade-long programme since it began as a pilot in NHS Lothian. An analysis report on a family nurse partnership shows positive results for mothers and babies in areas such as breastfeeding rates and stopping smoking, with most children meeting their milestones and 95% receiving all their immunisations. The Family Nurse Partnership supports young first-time mothers to prepare for motherhood and continues to support them throughout the first 2 years of a child's life. Women's Health Minister Marie Todd met mothers and staff who had taken part. She said, "Over 10,000 young women have now received report through this programme since it started, which is a fantastic milestone. Family nurses help mothers to think about the future, what kind of parent they want to be, and their goals and aspirations for other areas of their lives, such as education and employment." Marie Todd said that earlier this year the Scottish Government committed to expanding the programme to all young first-time mothers aged 21 and under by the end of 2024. That's all young mothers aged 21 and under by that date, by 2024. Where possible, the programme will also target first-time mothers under the age of 25 who are from care-experienced or the most deprived communities. This expansion will mean that as many as 500 more families per year could be supported by 2025. Val Alexander, who's a service manager of Family Nurse Partnership, has been with the programme since it began, and she said, "We're so proud of the Family Nurse Partnership and everything our clients have achieved. The Family Nurse Partnership programme works to support young first-time mothers to prepare for motherhood and continues to support them and their child through the first 2 years. The FNP was first developed in NHS Lothian, and to see it extended across Scotland to reach thousands more families is something very special for all of us. This 10-year analysis of the delivery of the service across Scotland will help us see how far we have come and map out our goals and ambitions for the future of the programme and for young families." So I think that's just about it tonight. If there's, I can't see anything else coming in late. So thank you for watching tonight. I'll be back tomorrow, and we'll bring you the latest news, and we'll hope to get some guests on to discuss it with us in depth. But a quick run through tonight. So it just remains for me to say thanks for watching, and in particular, if you haven't come across us before, to remind you that this station is always free to view, but we do need, of course, to pay the bills as everyone else does. The reason we are able to come on the air and to pay the rent in our excellent Glasgow studios here is because of the people who have looked on the website below, broadcastingscotland.scot, and who have clicked on the donate button. Now, if you want to help keep our independent news service for Scotland, we really do invite you to join in. You can first of all click on that link, and if you could start a standing order, no matter how small, if you can just start something regular or a direct debit once a month, that really is a big help to keeping us going. Any amount coming in just goes into paying the bills and keeping us on the air. So thanks for people who are contributing. You can also contribute, of course, by passing us on in your social media. So please tell a friend if you come across people who have some complaints about broadcasting in Scotland and would like to see it independent. We're here to do that for you, but we need your help. So please keep the money coming in, and we will keep the news coming out. So that's it from me, Hugh Stewart, tonight. So thanks for watching Scotland at 7, and I'll be back tomorrow. Bye. See you later.